Our guest today on Caribbeana is Mr. Camillo Gonzalez, and he is the Minister of with Ministry of Finance, Economic and Planning, and Information Technology. Am I right, Mr. Minister?
You got it right, Mr. Martin. Yes,
All
sir.
right. We also have on the line sitting with us is Ambassador Gilchrist, Luan Gilchrist. How are you, Ambassador? All right. She's
I'm well, thank you, Mr. Martin.
all right. Well, Mr. Gonzalez, you are the son of the Prime Minister.
I am.
Uh,
Yes.
right. You have a large shoes to fill, you know.
I don't think those are fillable. I don't think those are fillable, so I don't try.
Yeah. Well, would you care to share with us the purpose of your visit to Washington, D.C.? I know it's about Invest SVG.
Well, it's multi-pronged. This time of year, the World Bank and the IMF have their annual spring meetings.
Right.
So a lot of the countries from the Caribbean come to the World Bank at this time of year and the IMF to discuss global matters, discuss very rapidly changing circumstances in the world and in your town here,
Right.
and how they affect the world.
Right.
And additionally, as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have been on an investment thrust, an outreach to the various diaspora communities in the United Kingdom, Canada, obviously the various cities in the United States where we have a diaspora presence, to try to get them to re-energize interest in investing back home, investing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and investing not only their money but also their time and their experience and their ideas that they've gleaned over many years living here in the United States. So it's a multi-pronged thing, but we're hoping to make hay on both sides of that equation.
I would imagine you've brought businessmen with you and investors, that sort of type of individual on your team.
Yes, we have from the Ministry of Finance. We have people who can answer questions from business people. On other, we tend to travel with somebody from the local banks, somebody from the national properties entity that deals with the sale of lands and the like, and people from our investment agency, the arm of the government called Invest SVG, which can create essentially bespoke investment platforms for people. So if you say you're a baker or a real estate developer or a hospitality type investor, Invest SVG can partner with you to create the type of investment vehicle that would be attractive to you to get you to invest in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Right. Do you get a sense that lots of Vincentians are desirous of returning home to take part of the land development?
Yes, we do. St. Vincent and the Grenadines economically has been on a bit of an upswing of late. Since the COVID pandemic, our country was, everyone was affected, but we were the least affected by the COVID pandemic in economic terms.
Yes.
Not in terms of loss of life and these things, but in economic terms. Because we have been doing a lot of work in diversifying our economy and doing a lot of work in putting the necessary building blocks in place for growth and development. And that has carried forward over the last few years, despite some natural disasters, volcanoes and hurricanes and the like.
Right.
And investors, not just Vincentian investors, but investors around the Caribbean, investors around the world have been recognizing this economic growth and trying to get piece of this action, essentially, before while we are on the upswing. And that includes the Vincentian diaspora. A lot of people have noticed the progress and they want to get involved. Some of that investment is very simple. People just want to buy a piece of land and build a house to come home to when they retire. But there are also business people, supermarket owners, real estate developers, hospitality, people in the hospitality sector who want to take advantage of the new opportunities that are here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we're trying to connect the dot between the interest and actually making it happen.
Right, 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 right. This, in St. Vincent, what's the situation like? The Caribbean, for some of the islands, is noted about crime and this sort of thing. Um, do you have that kind of a problem? I don't hear much of it.
Well, I think all the countries in the Caribbean are struggling with crime to a greater or lesser extent. And I wouldn't want to say, hey, we're better than this guy, or not as good as that guy,
Right, right,
because the nature of transnational crime is that in one week, you can have some sort of outbreak because of something that happens beyond your shores. We are in a dangerous neighborhood. We're
yes,
located between the supply and the demand of drugs and guns. And
right, right,
some of those things move between and among our islands in ways that are difficult for us to control. We don't have the crime problem that some other countries in the region have. But nonetheless, we have struggles and we have challenges with crime, and we have to work very hard to address that.
right, right, right. No, the situation here in the US is a very different situation than we've had in the past.
Yes.
And the Caribbean has come for a point of comment within the dialogue and so on. How is the region handling it? How are you all handling it?
There have been a number, as you would know, as well as anyone, some very radical policy shifts in the United States of late, related to trade, related to immigration, and related to the United States administration's view of their role in the world, with their America First ideology, which sometimes sounds like America alone,
Right,
as
right,
opposed to just not America first. I mean, every country has a right to put themselves first, but
right, right, right.
but you would hope that participation in global cooperation and the like would continue nonetheless. There are some things that impact the Caribbean very directly and very urgently. The administration has taken a view related to our cooperation with Cuba, with medical personnel, that all countries of the region have pushed back against collectively and with one voice. They have placed, or either have placed or threatened to place, a number of sanctions on trade, which will impact our economies. And obviously, they've taken a very stern position related to immigration, both related to undocumented nationals of the Caribbean, but also just general immigration, even
Right,
legal immigration. And all of those things affect us because the Caribbean is a region of migrant people. We all travel, and
yeah,
we have always historically traveled,
yeah,
and so that impacts us. The trade sanctions are potentially very, very dangerous to the Caribbean,
yeah,
not only because of what we may trade export to the United States, but because of the fact that most of what we bring into the region comes through the United States, even if it is not of US origin. So,
yes,
for example, a lot of the fruits and vegetables that come from Mexico, we don't import them from Mexico. We import them from Miami. So they go from Mexico to Miami and then they
right,
come down.
right,
In that case, they would attract a 25% tariff. And
right,
that would mean mommy and daddy in the supermarket in Trinidad and Tobago, in St. Vincent
right,
and the Grenadines, in Barbados, their grocery bill will get higher. The beef and the chicken from Argentina and Brazil also come through Miami. A lot of products that of European origin also come through the United States first. So we've been trying to engage with the United States on trade matters, but also to develop our own logistical arrangements so that we
yeah,
don't have to rely so much on the US as a source,
right,
as a
right, right,
shipment point. And we have a number of ports in the region. Port of Spain is an excellent port. The port of Kingston in Jamaica is an excellent port. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is developing a new port. And we're hoping that we can get some of these goods to move into the region without having to stop in the US.
yes,
And that will save the people of our region a tremendous amount of money. We believe that just as the United States has a right to their foreign relations, we have a right to ours, and we have been defending our sovereignty with the United States related to our engagements with Cuba and Venezuela and other countries, and we continue to work with them on immigration. We recognize their right to make their own rules
yes,
related to immigration,
Yeah.
but we hope that we can sensitize them to some of the challenges that these rules might cause, not only in our region, but also to them.
Right,
Because
right.
we have learned that immigration never stops, it either comes
Oh,
legal
no.
or it comes illegally.
Right,
And,
right.
and so we want to work with
Right.
them to the extent that we can,
Yeah.
but also mark our positions clearly. The Caribbean community has been meeting regularly at the levels of the prime ministers and the ministers to develop common positions, so that when we engage with the U.S. administration,
Yes.
we're engaging with one voice and from a position of relative strength.
Right.
In that regard.
Yeah, you don't know how these words are so important to us, for our listeners to hear.
Yes.
One more thing before we conclude. Indigenous people,
Yes.
the Garifuna, very
Yes.
close to me, especially because I have relatives coming from St. Vincent. My grandfather was from St. Vincent and so on. And I know that there's an indigenous population. St. Vincent is very critical to the population of indigenous people.
Yes.
Are there any developments, any betterment, any programs taking place for them?
Absolutely. And first of all, I'd like to tell you that if your grandfather is a Vincentian, you need to stop over by Ambassador Gilchrist's office, because you can claim Vincentian citizenship. It's up to your second generation, so not just the children of Vincentians,
Yeah.
but the grandchildren of Vincentians. So you are a Vinci. You are a
And
Vinci.
my wife's mother is from St. Vincent.
And there you go. You're Vinci all around. So we're going to borrow some of you from Trinidad and Tobago in that regard.
Yeah.
But the Garifuna and the indigenous population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are a critical part of our identity. Our only national hero is Paramount Chief Joseph Chatoe, who was a Garifuna.
Yeah.
And we have been investing tremendously in improving the physical and economic and social condition of the areas of St. Vincent and the Grenadines where the Garifuna were relegated to after colonialism. In the United States, I think they call it a reservation, where they put the Indians, they put the Native Americans on a reservation. The British did a similar thing after the genocide of the Garifuna. They drove them as far north as they could in the island of St. Vincent, and then they gathered up over 5,000 Garifuna. We fought two wars. The Garifuna fought two wars against the British in the 1700s, late 1600s, early 1700s. And they gathered up the 5,000 or so Garifuna warriors and their wives and deported them to an island in the Grenadines first called Baliso. And within a few months, within 4 months, 2,500 of those 5,000 Garifuna had perished because there was no food or water on that island.
Yes, yeah.
And then they gathered the remaining 2,500 and deported them further off of Honduras. And that genocide plays a very important role in not only our history and our identity, but how we view the world in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes.
And it's a seminal moment in our development. What we have done this year that is of particular interest to Garifuna around the world, because Garifuna, when they were deported to Honduras, they thrived, and they lived in Honduras, in Belize, in Nicaragua, and also many of them have migrated to the United States.
Yeah.
The island of Baliso, where they were first deported, was an island that was owned even then by the British, by an individual. And when our country became independent in 1979, the island remained in the hands of various British families over the years. This year, the government acquired that island, the island of Baliso. And we have decided to make that island a place of remembrance and reconciliation. And we are making that a monument, the entire island, a monument to the struggle and the sacrifice and ultimately the triumph of the Garifuna people. And so it's an expensive undertaking. We're not a wealthy country, and to acquire an island is not a cheap thing.
Right.
But we're very proud that we have reclaimed what is sacred ground to the Garifuna and what is sacred to our own history. because there are 25,000 bodies that are on that island that were not properly buried according to native traditions and the like. And we have decided to make that island a place of remembrance. And we're very proud of that, as well as a number of important initiatives in terms of we're building new schools in the communities populated by the Garifuna. We've built new housing settlements and tremendous investments in infrastructure, roads and bridges and the like, to ensure that they are connected to the rest of the country and that the historical disadvantages that were foisted upon them by colonizers and then by years of neglect thereafter are reversed. So we're investing tremendously in the area, and we're exceedingly proud of the resistance that the Garifuna put up against the colonial British powers, and their ultimate triumph over attempts to eliminate the native population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Their very survival, their very presence is an act of resistance and triumph in our country.
Right. Well, Minister Gonsalves, I want to thank you so much. Ambassador Gilchrist, we'll be talking another time. But nevertheless, the information was tremendous, and I want to extend my appreciation to you for affording us the time to discuss the situation with St. Vincent and the Grenadines and its advancement with investment.
Thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak with you. We really enjoyed it. And now you're a Vinci, you have to go get your passport. All the best.
All right, take care.
God bless.
All right. I've been speaking with the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Information Technology of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Ambassador Luan Gilchrist has been sitting in with us. This is Von Martin. Caribbeana continues.